Have you ever been pushed so far that you had no choice but to fight back? That was me when an expensive cream envelope arrived. It was an invitation to my ex-husband Garrett's wedding to Tessa, the woman he left me for. Inside, a note said, "No hard feelings. No hard feelings for cheating, for leaving me with $700 a month, or for shattering my life." Then I saw the date he chose for his new beginning, our old wedding anniversary. In that moment, I decided I would attend his wedding, but I would not go as the broken woman he expected. My name is Rebecca, and this is how I showed up on his perfect day to reveal the secrets he thought were buried forever. I arrived in a billionaire's private jet with our twins, ready to destroy his world with nothing but the truth. Stick around, because he never saw what was coming. This is a story about reclaiming your power when everyone expects you to stay broken. If you have ever felt invisible, underestimated, or thrown away by someone who was supposed to love you, this story will remind you that your worth was never theirs to decide. The invitation felt like a cruel joke on my kitchen counter. The apartment was silent, with my children, Evan and Emma, at school. My coffee was ice cold. I could have ripped the invitation to shreds. I could have called my sister Diane. Instead, I glanced at my laptop, at an unanswered email from a man named Julian. Then I looked back at the names on the card, Garrett Sullivan and Tessa Brightwell. My hands trembled as I read the personal note inside. It was in his handwriting, the same script that once wrote me love letters and later signed our divorce papers. He wrote that he hoped I would come so the kids could see both their parents happy. He signed it, "No hard feelings." The phrase echoed in my mind, no hard feelings for the affair or for taking everything in the divorce while I struggled to raise our children. I checked the date one more time, June 15th. It was a deliberate blow. He was marrying her on the same day he married me 12 years ago. The memory of that day, 4 years ago, came rushing back when he walked in and ended our lives with 4 simple words. I was making his favorite dinner, spaghetti, while our 4-year-old twins played nearby. He stood in the doorway and said, "We need to talk. I want a divorce." There was no warning, no chance to fix what was wrong. He told me he had met someone who understood him better, someone younger, that someone was Tessa, my friend, a woman who had been in our wedding party. The memory shifted to the divorce that followed. Garrett's lawyer was ruthless, while mine was inexperienced and cheap, the only one I could afford. The court battle was the nightmare. Garrett got the house, the savings, everything. The judge decided that because I was a stay-at-home mom, I had earned nothing. I was left with $700 a month in child support and weekend visits with my kids. The past 4 years have been a constant struggle, working 2 jobs just to pay rent and hiding trips to the food bank from my children. His mother, Patricia, would call just to remind me it was my fault. I had become a ghost in my own life. I scrolled through old photos on my phone and saw my wedding picture. The smiling woman in the white dress felt like a stranger. That hopeful girl was gone. Just then, my laptop pinged with another email from Julian. He was the kind, patient man I had met 18 months ago. The man I didn't know was a tech billionaire until our 5th date. He understood why I needed to keep our relationship quiet, away from my ex-husband's world. Suddenly, my doorbell rang, making me jump. A serious-looking man in a suit stood at my door, holding a package marked confidential. My heart pounded as I signed for the package. There was no return address. Inside, I found plane tickets, documents, and a handwritten note from Julian. It read, "You deserve to walk into that room like you own the world, because you do." Beneath the note were financial records, bank statements, and asset transfers in Garrett's name, all from accounts he had hidden during our divorce. It was clear, undeniable proof that he had lied to the court. At the bottom was a note from Marcus Caldwell, Garrett's former business partner. He wrote, "I'm sorry it took me this long to do the right thing." I sank to the kitchen floor, the papers scattered around me. Julian had been investigating Garrett this whole time, quietly building a case to help me. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, Diane. "Are you okay?" I typed back. "Can you come over now? I need you." She replied instantly, "On my way." I stood up and put the evidence back into the package. As I made fresh coffee, I picked up the wedding invitation one last time. For the first time in years, a real, determined smile spread across my face. When Diane arrived, she saw my expression and asked, "What did he do now?" I just handed her the invitation. Diane read the invitation, her face shifting from concern to pure rage. "He invited you to his wedding on your anniversary?" she said in disbelief. "And he wrote, 'No hard feelings'? Is he insane?" I told her, "I think he actually believes he did nothing wrong." Diane looked at me closely. "There's something else, isn't there?" she asked. I handed her the package. She read through the documents, her eyes growing wider with every page she turned. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He hid all of this from you." I nodded. And Julian found it. We sat at my small, wobbly kitchen table, and I started to tell her everything. It all started at that little coffee place on 7th Street. I accidentally spilled a latte all over his laptop, but he just laughed, and we started talking. He was so kind and funny and truly present in a way my ex-husband Garrett never was. We began dating, keeping it casual at first. Soon, I was falling for him, and he was falling for me. But I couldn't tell a soul, not my kids, not you. I knew if Garrett discovered I was seeing someone with money, he would drag me back to court to lower the child support payments. It's exactly the kind of thing he would do. So Julian and I kept our entire relationship hidden. He understood that I had to protect my children, and he was willing to wait. He has been waiting for 18 months now. I keep pulling away because I am just so scared. Scared he will leave, scared he will decide I am not worth the trouble, scared he will turn out to be just like Garrett. I know it is not fair to Julian, because he has been nothing but good to me. But I cannot seem to shake the feeling. My sister Diane reached for my hand. She told me that I was not the one with the problem. But was I? Garrett spent years making me feel small and worthless. He convinced me I was lucky he even stayed. They were all lies, Becca. Every last one of them. I paced to the window, watching people walk their dogs, as if the world was not falling apart. He said I had no ambition, that I had let myself go after having the twins. He was having an affair with your so-called friend. His opinion means nothing. But what if there was some truth to it? I was so busy being the perfect wife and mother that maybe I forgot how to be myself. Diane's voice was firm. "Stop it. Stop defending the man who broke you. You are doing it again right now." Diane stood and came over to me. "Garrett Sullivan is a liar and a cheat. The proof is sitting on that table. He stole money from you and hid assets during the divorce. He broke the law. And you are worried you are not pretty enough for him?" My eyes started to burn. I look at the woman in my wedding pictures, and I do not recognize her. "She is still in there," Diane said softly. "She just forgot how to stand up for herself." The tears finally came, hot and angry. I buried my face in my sister's shoulder, letting out 4 years of pain. "I am just so tired of struggling," I sobbed. "I am tired of pretending that everything is fine when I feel like I am drowning. I work 2 jobs and still cannot afford to buy my kids new sneakers. I can't give them anything. You give them your love," she said. "That is more than Garrett ever did, and it is everything to them." We stood there until my sobs finally faded. I pulled away and wiped my eyes, managing a weak laugh. I got socked. He wants to fly all of us there on his private plane. My kids, me, and even you if you want to go. Diane's jaw dropped. You have been dating a man with a private jet, and you are worried you are not interesting enough? Becca, you have won the lottery. A real smile finally touched my lips. Julian thinks it is time for him to meet the twins properly. He says we have been hiding for too long. He is right. But what if they hate him? What if they love him? That could be even more complicated. Diane shook her head. You have to take a risk sometimes, Becca. You cannot protect yourself from everything. I looked at the wedding invitation, then at the evidence against Garrett, and then at my sister. Garrett only invited me because he thinks I'm still broken. He wants his new wife to see me struggling. He wants to show everyone how much he upgraded. Then prove him wrong, Diane said. Show up looking like a queen, with a man who truly loves you and your children by your side. Walk in there like you own the world. Because you do, Becca. You just forgot. I stood there, picturing Garrett laughing about the invitation he sent, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Okay, I said softly, I will do it. I will go to that wedding with Julian and the kids, and I will walk in with my head held high. A wide grin spread across Diane's face. That is the sister I know, but I needed to do one thing first. I picked up my phone and found Julian's number. I am ready, I typed. No more hiding. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. A reply came back almost instantly. I was hoping you would say that. When can I see you? I smiled. A real, genuine smile. Tonight. Come over and meet my sister. And soon, you will meet my kids. I will be there at 7 o'clock, Diane read the message over my shoulder. You are introducing him tonight? No more waiting, I said. If I'm going to do this, I am going all in. It is about time, she replied. Together, we cleaned the kitchen and put the evidence in a safe place. We hung the wedding invitation on the refrigerator as a reminder of the challenge ahead. As Diane left, she turned and said she was proud of me for surviving, for fighting back, and for remembering who I truly am. When the door closed, the silence in my apartment felt different. It was not empty anymore. It was calm and full of purpose. June 15th, I had 2 months to prepare. 2 months for Garrett to believe he had won. Then I would show him just how wrong he was. 7 o'clock arrived sooner than I expected. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not because it was needed, but because the routine calmed my racing heart. I scrubbed and vacuumed and organized the kids' closets. At 6:45, I looked in the mirror. I was wearing jeans and a soft sweater. I looked normal, but I felt anything but. My phone buzzed. It was Julian, saying he was parking. My heart leaped into my throat. I told myself to breathe. This was just Julian. Kind, patient Julian. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, he was standing there in jeans and a simple shirt, holding a bottle of wine. His eyes, though, were what made him special. They were eyes that truly saw me. Hi, he said. Hi. I pulled him inside and kissed him deeply. The wine bottle dropped to the floor, but he caught me and kissed me back. When we finally came up for air, we were both breathless. Hi again, I said. He let out that warm laugh that I loved so much. Hello to you too. We retrieved the wine, which was somehow still in one piece. In the kitchen, my hand trembled as I poured us each a glass. You are nervous, Julian noted. Of course I am. Do not be, he said. It is only me. That is precisely why I am nervous. He looked confused. I do not understand. Because this is finally real, I explained. It is not just us in secret anymore. Diane knows. Soon the children will know. And that is terrifying. He put his glasses down and took both of my hands. Becca, look at me. I am not him. I know you are afraid I will hurt you like he did. But I promise, I am not Garrett. He said he loved me, too, I whispered. On our wedding day, he said all the right words, and then he still left. So how can I trust that you will not do the same thing? Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I never expected. You cannot. Not right away. Trust is not given, Becca. It has to be earned. And I have not earned yours yet, he continued, but I will spend every single day trying until you finally believe me. My throat felt tight. What if it takes years? Then it will take years. What if I am too broken to trust anyone again? Then we will face that together. But you are not broken, Becca. You are hurt. There is a very big difference. The tears started again, and I was so tired of crying. He just held me, letting me cry into his shirt without trying to fix anything. I am getting your shirt all wet, I mumbled. He smiled. I have other shirts. This is becoming a habit. First coffee on my laptop, now this. I guess I am just destructive. No, he said, looking right at me. You are perfect. You know, you investigated Garrett. You built this whole case against him without telling me anything. He had the decency to look a little sheepish, I did. I am sorry about that. Why did you not ask me first? I knew you would tell me not to, he admitted. That you would say it was too much trouble. Have you ever been told you are not good enough? Becca's ex-husband, Garrett, spent years making her believe that. He said she would never find a man who was successful and generous. He said she did not deserve a man like Julian. But Garrett was wrong, and now Becca had a chance to prove it. This is a story about reclaiming your power. So, what would you do? Julian gently held her face. He told me I should stay away, that you were not worth the effort, Becca. You survived 4 years of cruelty and came out stronger, still fighting for your kids. That is not ordinary. That is extraordinary. Just then the doorbell rang. It was Becca's sister, Diane. She looked from Becca to Julian and smiled. Well, I wanted to meet the famous billionaire boyfriend. Julian shook her hand. My name is Julian Ashford. It is a pleasure to meet you. Diane studied him for a moment. Okay, he is approved. You cannot approve him after 30 seconds, Becca laughed. Watch me, Diane replied. He has kind eyes and he makes you smile. That is more than Garrett managed in 10 years. Julian's plan was simple, but bold. We are all going to the wedding. You, me, the children, and Diane. We will arrive on a private jet. We need to make a statement before we even set foot in the door. Diane's eyes lit up. I like the way you think, but that is not all, Julian said, pulling out his phone. He showed them a file. Becca's jaw dropped when she saw what was on the screen. You want to show this to Tessa's family at the wedding? Not at the wedding, Julian corrected. At the reception, quietly. Her father needs to know who he is dealing with. You see, Garrett's business is failing badly. He has been moving money around to hide his losses. Tessa's family is about to give him $1 million based on lies. If we do not warn them, they will lose everything. Becca looked at him with new understanding. So, this is not about revenge. It is about protecting an innocent family. Julian nodded. It is about the truth. Garrett has lied to everyone for too long. Someone has to stop him, and we have help. Garrett's business partner, Marcus Caldwell, is the one who gathered all this proof. He felt guilty for staying silent during your divorce. Now, he wants to help make things right. Later that night, Becca asked Julian to stay. They lay in bed, the space between them filled with unspoken questions. Tell me about the first time you saw me, she whispered in the dark. At the coffee shop, he said. You came rushing in, a beautiful storm of chaos. You ordered a black coffee, and when the barista said something, you let out this genuine, wonderful laugh. I knew right then I had to know the person who could laugh like that. Then I spilled coffee all over you, she remembered. He smiled. Best coffee spill of my life. Why me, Julian? You could have anyone. Because you are real, he said softly. With you, I am not a billionaire. I am just Julian. And that is the problem, she said. Liking you means trusting you. And I do not know if I can survive being broken again. He turned to face her. Then let us just focus on right now. Are you okay right now? Yes, she whispered. Then that is enough for now. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Becca took the evidence to her lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Martinez. This is incredible, the lawyer said. This is enough to reopen your divorce settlement and maybe even press criminal charges. Becca thought for a moment. For now, let us just focus on getting a fair settlement, one step at a time. The lawyer nodded. Good. Let us go get what you are owed. Leaving the office, Becca felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had taken the first, hardest step. Now it was time for the second. Becca sat her 8-year-old twins down for a talk. I have a friend, she began carefully, someone I care about, who wants to meet you. Evan, her son, looked at her with serious eyes. Is he your boyfriend? Because Dad said you would never find anyone as good as him. The words were a punch to the gut. Becca struggled to keep her composure. Emma, her daughter, nodded. He said you got lazy, and that is why he left. Becca took a deep breath, fighting back a wave of anger. Your father is wrong, she said. Her voice firm but kind. I was not lazy. I was busy taking care of 2 wonderful children, which is the hardest job in the world. As for my friend, his name is Julian, and he is kind and funny. He wants to meet you because you are the most important people in my life. Of course, Garrett found out about Julian. He started spreading rumors, telling people Becca was only after Julian's money. It got so bad that Evan got into a fight at school defending his mom. That night, Becca called Julian, distraught. It does not matter what he says, Julian told her. People will always talk. If you are with me, they will say you are a gold digger. If you are alone, they will say you are pathetic. You cannot win their game, so stop playing it. The only opinions that matter are yours, your children's, and your sister's. Everyone else is just noise. His words were simple, but they were exactly what she needed to hear. She was done playing Garrett's game. She was ready to write her own rules. His name is Julian. He is kind and funny, and he means the world to me. Becca took a deep breath, looking at her 2 children. I need you both to know that no one could ever replace your dad. But I am allowed to be happy too. Is that okay? Evan and Emma exchanged a look. Finally, Evan spoke. Does he make you smile? Becca's heart ached. Yes, real smiles. Not the fake ones I use when your dad talks about Tessa. They noticed. Of course they did. Real smiles. Evan repeated. Then I guess it is okay. Emma nodded. When can we meet him? This Saturday, Becca said. We will go to the park and get some ice cream. No pressure at all. Later that night, she called her friend, Diane. He told our 8-year-old children that I was lazy, that I let myself go, and that no one would ever want me. You need to document this, Becca, Diane said firmly. Tell your lawyer. This is parental alienation. I know I will, Becca whispered. But right now, I just had to say it out loud, or I was going to scream. Then scream, Diane said. I will. Wait. Becca screamed into a pillow, a long, furious sound. When she finished, Diane's voice was calm. Better? A little? Good. Now, Julian meeting the kids is a big step. You have to be sure he is in this for the long haul, because if they love him and he leaves, it will break them. I am sure, Becca said. But a moment later, she admitted the truth. I am terrified. I wake up every day expecting him to realize he could do better. Diane's voice softened. Those are Garrett's words in your head, not the truth. Has Julian ever made you feel small or put you down? No. Has he been anything but patient and kind? No. Then trust the evidence in front of you, not the ghosts in your head. Saturday arrived quickly. Becca changed her clothes 4 times, finally settling on simple jeans and a soft blue shirt. Julian picked them up at 10 in the morning in a normal, family-style sport utility vehicle. The twins were quiet and suspicious in the back seat. "Hi," Julian said, his voice a little nervous. "It is really nice to meet you both." Silence. Then Emma asked, "How much money do you have?" "Emma!" Becca gasped. Julian just laughed, completely unfazed. "That is a fair question. I have more than I need and less than I want. That is not a real answer," Evan pointed out. "You are right," Julian agreed. "The simple answer is that I have enough to be comfortable and to help the people I care about." "Are you trying to buy us?" Evan asked. "Because Dad's girlfriend buys us things to make us like her." "No," Julian said gently. "I just want to get to know you. If you do not like me, that is okay." At the park, Julian was perfect. He pushed Emma on the swings and played basketball with Evan. He gave them space and time. After an hour, Emma ran over. "Julian, can you push me higher?" Becca's heart swelled when she heard her daughter use his name. At lunch, they went to the kids' favorite pizza place. Evan talked about his love for math, and Emma described a dragon she was drawing. Julian listened to every word. When he dropped them off, he told Becca, "They are amazing. They liked you," she said. "I like them too. What if they get attached and you—" He stopped her worries with a soft kiss. "I am not going anywhere. I am all in. Stop waiting for me to leave." That night, Emma climbed into bed with her. "Mom? I like Julian. He is nice, Mom." "I am glad, sweetie. He is not trying to be Dad," Emma said. "He is just Julian." The next morning, Evan approached her. "Mom, if you marry Julian, do we have to call him Dad?" "No, baby, never," Becca promised. "You already have a dad. Julian would just be Julian." Evan looked relieved. "Okay, because Dad is kind of mean sometimes, but he is still Dad. And Julian actually listened when I talked about math. So, he can stick around." 2 weeks later, Garrett called, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I just wanted to check in about the wedding. Tessa has been asking." "I am coming," Becca said flatly. "Great. And I know money is tight, so if you need to wear something simple, that is totally fine. No one will judge." Her blood boiled. "I will be appropriately dressed, Garrett." She hung up and texted Diane, who replied, "Oh, he is going to regret that." Then Becca texted Julian, "Are you sure about this? All of it?" His answer was immediate. "I have never been more sure of anything." "Even the jet?" he texted back. She smiled. "Especially the jet. 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks until Garrett Sullivan learned the biggest lesson of his life. But 2 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. The school called. "Ms. Hartwell, this is Principal Morrison. There was an incident with Evan at lunch. She was at the school in 20 minutes. Evan sat in the office with a bleeding lip and scraped knuckles. Another boy was crying nearby. There was a fight," the principal explained. "Evan hit Tyler." Becca looked at her gentle son, confused. "Why?" she asked him. "He said you were a gold digger," Evan mumbled. "He said you are dating a rich guy for his money and that everyone knows you are broke." The other boy's mother started to cry. "Tyler, why would you say such a terrible thing?" Tyler sniffled. "My dad said it. He said Garrett Sullivan's ex-wife was dating a billionaire and was just after his money. My dad works with Mr. Sullivan." The room fell silent. Of course. Garrett had been spreading rumors to everyone at his job. Becca knelt in front of her son. "You defended me. I know you were protecting me, but we do not hit people." Tears welled up in Evan's eyes. "I am sorry." In the car on the way home, Evan was quiet. "How did Dad find out about Julian?" he finally asked. Becca sighed. "I do not know, honey. I thought we were being so careful." The morning of the wedding arrived. Diane showed up early with coffee and a determined look. "Today, we are going full glamour," she announced. "Hair, makeup, the works. Today, you will walk in there like a queen and show him exactly what he threw away." "I feel more like a nervous wreck," Becca admitted. "Then fake it," Diane said with a grin. By the time they were finished, Becca stared at her reflection in disbelief. The woman looking back was powerful, confident, and beautiful. She was a version of herself she had forgotten existed. Just then, the twins came home. They stopped dead in the doorway, their eyes wide. "Mom," Emma breathed, "you look like a princess." What would truly be enough to show him? She wanted Garrett to see her thriving. She wanted him to understand that she had not only survived, but had grown stronger without him. The next day, Garrett's call went straight to voicemail. His message was a thinly veiled threat about child support, now that he heard she was dating someone new. Becca deleted it and called her lawyer, Jennifer. Jennifer confirmed his motives. He was looking for an excuse to reduce his payments. She advised Becca to ignore him completely and let their evidence do the talking in court. Later that day, her daughter Emma came home with a drawing of their family. It showed Becca, her brother Evan, Emma herself, and a ball-kind-eyed man. Becca already knew who the man was, but she asked anyway. Emma smiled and said, "That's Julian. He's part of our family now, is not he?" She added that Julian made her mom laugh, something she never did around her dad. That evening, Julian arrived with pizza. He played games with Evan and patiently looked through every single one of Emma's dragon drawings. He told her she was a true artist and asked if she had ever considered taking a real art class. When Emma said they were too expensive, Julian looked at Becca. He offered to arrange for a friend who teaches art to take Emma as a student. Becca was overwhelmed. He was not doing it out of obligation, but because he genuinely saw her daughter's talent. Emma's eyes grew wide with excitement. She threw her arms around Julian in a joyful hug. Later, after the children were asleep, Becca and Julian sat together. She told him he was wonderful with her kids. He told her that Evan had gotten into a fight at school for defending her honor. He was not upset. He was proud that Evan stood up for someone he loved. Then Julian turned to her, his expression serious. He told her he was completely committed to her and the kids. He knew she was waiting for him to leave, but he promised he was not going anywhere. He asked if she was ready to be all in, too. Becca admitted she was scared. He looked around her small, worn apartment and said he loved it. It was the place where she had built a new life and raised her children alone. It was where she had survived. In that moment, she leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss filled with both fear and hope. She whispered that she was terrified, but she was all in. Just then her phone rang. It was Garrett again. She let it ring, and Julian smiled. 2 days later, a call came from an unexpected person. Patricia Sullivan, Garrett's mother. Becca was hesitant, but her curiosity made her answer. Patricia's voice was different, asking, not demanding, to meet. She suggested an Italian place on 5th Street the next day at noon. Becca found herself agreeing before she could think twice. She immediately called her sister, Diane. Diane was shocked. She remembered the 10 years of misery Patricia had caused Becca. Diane insisted on going with her to the meeting, making it clear it was not up for discussion. If Patricia tried anything, she would be there to protect her sister. So, the next day, they went together. Patricia was waiting for them, looking older and sadder than Becca remembered. She got straight to the point. She offered Becca a profound apology for years of terrible treatment. Patricia confessed that she had pushed Garrett toward his new fiancée, Tessa, because Tessa's family had money and connections. She admitted she had been horribly wrong. Patricia's hands trembled as she explained the real reason for the meeting. Garrett's business had been failing for 2 years. His upcoming wedding was just a business deal to get access to Tessa's family money, and he was lying to them about his finances. His own business partner, Marcus, had been documenting everything out of guilt. Patricia explained that she could no longer stand by and watch her son destroy another person's life. She was tired of protecting him from himself. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside was all the proof Becca needed. There were bank statements, private messages, and emails that detailed every lie he had told during their divorce. Patricia handed the folder to a stunned Becca. She said that while she could not change the past, she could help shape the future. She urged Becca to use the evidence to stop Garrett from hurting anyone else. As Patricia stood to leave, she told Becca she hoped she would walk into that wedding feeling like she owned the room, because she always had. After Patricia left, Diane and Becca sat in stunned silence. Becca flipped through the pages of evidence. It was more than enough. She looked at her sister and made a decision. She was going to that wedding with Julian and her kids. She was going to show everyone the strong, confident woman she had become. For the first time in 4 long years, Becca felt a sense of victory. The woman who used to make herself small to make Garrett feel big was gone forever. 10 days before the wedding, Garrett called one more time. This time, Becca answered with a newfound strength in her voice. He began to question her about the billionaire she was seeing. Have you ever been made to feel small, just so someone else could feel powerful? That's what my ex-husband, Garrett, specialized in. When he found out I was dating a wonderful man named Julian, he called me. After a long pause, I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. His first question was not about my happiness, but about money. He said, "If this is serious, we need to renegotiate custody and support payments." There it was. He thought my new relationship meant he could stop supporting his own children. I told him we were not renegotiating anything. He argued that if I was with someone wealthy, I no longer needed his money. Legally, that was not true unless we were married. The conversation turned cold. "Are you planning to marry him?" he demanded. I told him it was none of his business. His response told me everything I needed to know. He cared only about his financial obligations, not the well-being of our kids. This story is about finally standing up to a bully. It is about realizing your own worth, and if you have ever felt like you were not enough, I want you to listen closely. "I am getting married in 10 days, I said, trying to end the conversation. "Can we not do this now?" But he pushed. "You brought this up. So, yes, we are doing this now." Then came that condescending sigh I remembered so well. He told me he was trying to be civil, then delivered his final insult. "I will see you at the wedding. Please try to dress appropriately. I know money is tight for you, but Tessa worked hard on this, and I would hate for you to embarrass her." Every instinct told me to hang up, but instead, I promised to be dressed appropriately. He then had the nerve to say he hoped we could be mature for the children. I agreed that our kids needed to see both their parents happy. "We are perfect," I said, then hung up the phone, shaking with a quiet rage. My sister Diane showed up 15 minutes later. She always knew. After I told her what he said, she paced my apartment, furious. "I want to punch him," she said. "Get in line," I replied. "How are you so calm?" she asked. I told her I was not calm, just saving my energy for the wedding. Diane stopped and looked at me. "You have changed," she said. "A few months ago, you would have apologized to him." She was right. I had finally chosen to stop letting him control me. As I made us some tea, I confessed my own doubts. I wondered if my plan to show up at the wedding with Julian, looking successful and happy, was for the right reasons. Am I doing this to be free? I asked. Or am I doing this for revenge? Diane thought for a moment. Does it have to be one or the other? She asked. I think you can want to be free of his control and also want him to see that he did not break you. But I worried about his new wife, Tessa. She would be collateral damage when we exposed him as a fraud at her own wedding. Diane saw it differently. Think of it as saving her from making the same mistake you did. She reminded me of how vibrant I was before Garrett, and how I had become a ghost by the end of our marriage. For the first time, I let myself feel the years of suppressed anger. I did not deserve what he did, I said, my voice getting louder until I was screaming and crying. Diane just held me, letting me release all the pain. When it was over, I felt lighter. Now get angry, she said. Use it. Walk into that wedding and show him exactly what he lost. That night, I could not sleep. I cleaned my entire apartment until my hands were raw and the sun came up. When things feel out of control, cleaning helps. At 7 in the morning, Julian called. He just knew I was awake. I told him about Garrett's phone call, about the demand to renegotiate child support, and the insult about my clothes. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he asked for Garrett's number. He wanted to call Garrett and stand up for me, but I stopped him. Julian did not like it, but he understood when I told him this was my fight to handle. He said, "He does not get to make you feel small. Not anymore." I knew I did not have to handle it alone, but I needed to do it myself. He trusted me. Our plan was set. A man named Marcus Cowell had the evidence to prove Garrett's business was a fraud. He would discreetly show it to Tessa's father at the wedding. It was a risk, but it was the right thing to do. Then, with only 8 days left, I got a call from Patricia, a former employee of Garrett's. She warned me that Garrett was suspicious. He was watching everyone. "Be careful," she said. "He is going to be on alert." Before hanging up, she told me she was proud of me for fighting back. A few days later, my twins, Emma and Evan, asked about the wedding. They were happy Julian was coming. "He talks to us like we are real people," Emma said. My heart ached, but I knew my kids were strong and kind. 3 days before the wedding, Diane took me to a beautiful store I could never afford. She insisted we find the perfect dress. I walked out of the dressing room in an emerald green gown, a color Garrett always said washed me out. I looked stunning. Diane said, "That is the one." It was expensive, but she told me Julian had already called her and paid for whatever I wanted. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and recognized the strong, confident woman staring back at me. I decided to accept the gift. 2 days before the wedding, Garrett sent a text message. "Thank you for being mature about this," it read. "The kids are lucky to have you as a mom." It was another attempt to control the situation, to make himself feel like the good guy. I read it 3 times, then smiled. I replied with just 3 words, "See you Saturday." He had no idea what was coming. For so long, I had tried to be enough for him. I finally realized that I was always enough. He was the one who was not. The night before the wedding, panic set in. I sat on my bathroom floor, unable to breathe, my mind spiraling with doubt. What if this was all a mistake? What if I was just a gold digger, like he always claimed? What if I was not strong enough to see this through? My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Julian. "Cannot sleep either," he wrote. "Thinking about you, about tomorrow, about how proud I am of you." Tears filled my eyes as I typed back, "I am terrified." His response came instantly. "I know. But you are not alone. I am here. Diane is here. You are surrounded by people who love you." I asked him, "What if I am not ready?" He replied, "You are. You have been ready for years." And in that moment, I knew he was right. That night, a wave of panic washed over Becca. She sent a desperate text to Julian, and his name immediately lit up her phone. He could hear the fear in her voice and told her to talk to him. He reminded her of the facts. She had survived years of hardship. She had raised two amazing children on her own. She had rebuilt her life from scratch. He told her she was the strongest person he knew. Strength, he said, is not about being fearless. It is about moving forward even when you are afraid. She asked him why he had chosen her, wanting the real story. He told her the truth. The first time he saw her, in the coffee shop, she looked completely exhausted and overwhelmed. But when the barista told a joke, she let out a genuine, beautiful laugh. In that moment, he knew he wanted to know the person who could find joy even in the hardest of times, the person who never gave up. Her tears began to fall. Julian reassured her that it was okay to be human and to feel scared. He promised that no matter what happened tomorrow, she would survive it, just like she had survived everything else. They talked until the sun began to rise. When they finally hung up, the panic was gone. Becca got up, made coffee, and looked at the wedding invitation on her refrigerator. She was ready. Becca smiled. A real, genuine smile. You think so? Evan nodded, his face full of awe. Yeah, Mom, you really do. In that moment, surrounded by the people who truly loved her, Becca felt a profound sense of peace. The wedding was no longer about Garrett. It was not about revenge or proving him wrong. It was about her. It was about walking into that room, standing tall, and showing everyone, especially herself, that she was not broken. She was whole, and she was finally free. You look beautiful, Evan whispered. Thank you, my sweethearts, Becca said. Now go get ready. We have a wedding to attend. As they hurried to their rooms, Diane helped Becca with the zipper on the stunning emerald dress. Becca faced the mirror and saw a stranger, yet it was her. Are you ready for this? Diane asked. Not at all, Becca replied, but I'm going. Julian arrived at 1 o'clock, looking sharp enough for a magazine cover. He stopped dead when he saw Becca. What is it? She asked. A wave of insecurity washing over her. Is this too much? You are absolutely breathtaking. The twins emerged, Emma in a soft blue dress and Evan in a tiny suit. Julian knelt. You two look incredible. You look good too, Julian, Emma replied. They climbed into a large vehicle and drove to a private airport, a place of quiet luxury the children had never seen. Wow! A real plane? Emma shouted with joy. Julian's pilot greeted them, and they boarded the jet. It was smaller than Becca imagined, but incredibly refined. The cabin was filled with soft leather and polished wood. As the jet climbed, Becca stared out the window, watching the world shrink below. You doing okay? Julian asked softly. I will be after this is over, she answered. To keep the mood light, Diane told funny stories, but a knot of anxiety tightened in Becca's stomach. Soon, she would confront her past at Garrett's wedding. A text from Marcus Caldwell confirmed he was at the venue with the evidence. He would present it to Tessa's father during the reception. The plan was in motion. There was no going back. After landing, they were met by a pair of sleek, black cars. This is the coolest day ever, Emma declared. Wait until Dad sees us, Evan added, and Becca's heart ached. This was never about revenge. It was about exposing the truth and protecting another woman from the same heartbreak. She thought, I could hate Tessa, but she is just another victim. This cycle of pain had to end, and I have to be the one to break it. They arrived at a grand estate with sprawling lawns and elegant white tents. This was the expensive wedding Garrett always claimed they could never afford. Here we go, Diane said with a steadying breath. Becca echoed her words. As they pulled up, other guests in ordinary cars stopped and stared. Julian exited first and offered Becca his hand. She stepped out, her emerald dress shimmering in the sun, her posture perfect. Diane and the twins followed. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Is that Rebecca Hartwell? And is that Julian Ashford with her? Did they arrive on a private jet? Becca walked forward, her head held high, with Julian's hand gently on her back. A flustered wedding planner intercepted them. I am sorry, there must be a mistake. Are you on the list? Becca gave a cool, calm smile. Rebecca Hartwell, +4. The planner frantically tapped at her tablet. The list only shows Rebecca, with no mention of children or other guests. The assigned table has no extra space. Julian's voice was quiet, but carried immense authority. I am certain we can find a solution. The planner's eyes widened in recognition. Yes, of course, Mr. Ashford. I will arrange something immediately. This way, please. They were led into a breathtaking reception area adorned with white flowers and crystal chandeliers. It was the picture of perfection that Garrett had always craved. More heads turned, and the whispers intensified. From across the lawn, Patricia Sullivan, Garrett's mother, saw them. She looked pale for a moment, then a small, genuine smile appeared on her face. She walked over to them. Rebecca, you look absolutely beautiful. Becca was taken aback. Thank you, Patricia. Patricia then greeted the children warmly before turning to Julian. You must be Julian Ashford. I have heard so much about you, she said, extending a hand. Julian shook it. I hope they were all good things. Patricia's smile turned sad. She looked at Becca and said, I am so glad you came, before walking away. Diane leaned close. Did Garrett's mother just give you a compliment? I believe she did, Becca whispered. They were shown to a hastily arranged table near the back. From there, Becca saw Lydia Monroe, who caught her eye and gave a subtle, supportive nod. Another person who knew the truth. As the ceremony began, Garrett appeared at the altar, looking tanned and confident in his tuxedo. Then he saw them. His expression shifted from shock to anger and finally to cold calculation. His eyes locked on Julian, and the recognition was clear. Becca watched his perfect composure begin to crumble. She offered a tiny, knowing smile. Garrett's jaw tightened. He quickly looked away, but the damage was done. The bridal march began, and everyone stood. Tessa appeared, young and radiant, in a dress that likely cost a small fortune. As she walked down the aisle, Becca felt a surge of pity, not envy. This poor girl had no idea who she was marrying. The ceremony was long and traditional. Becca watched Garrett, who kept glancing nervously toward her table. He was completely distracted. When it was time for the vows, Garrett's voice trembled slightly as he rushed through his lines. Do you, Garrett Michael Sullivan, take this woman? I do, he interrupted, far too quickly. Tessa gave him a look of concern. And do you, Tessa Marie Brightwell? I do, she replied softly. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Their kiss was brief and awkward. As the guests applauded, Becca clapped politely. It is almost over, she whispered to the twins. The guests moved to the cocktail reception. Music and laughter filled the air as people mingled with glasses of champagne. Becca stood by Julian's side while the twins enjoyed sparkling cider. Soon, a curious guest approached. Rebecca? You look incredible. Who is this handsome man? This is Julian, Becca replied. We met at a coffee shop, Julian added smoothly. She spilled coffee all over my laptop. The woman laughed loudly. How charming it was, Julian agreed, his eyes on Becca. It was the best day of my life. The woman quickly excused herself, no doubt eager to spread the new gossip. A short while later, Garrett approached them alone. Becca, you came, he said, his gaze shifting from her to Julian, then to the children. I was not aware you were bringing guests. You said our children should witness both of their parents moving on. Becca replied calmly. This is part of their future. Garrett's jaw was tight. And who is this? Julian extended his hand. Julian Ashford. A pleasure. Garrett's face paled as he recognized the powerful name. How long has this been going on? He demanded. 18 months, Becca said, her voice steady. The children met him just last week. Garrett looked as if he had been struck. And you thought bringing him here, to my wedding, was a good idea? You invited me, she reminded him. You said there were no hard feelings. I simply took you at your word. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. We need to discuss the new custody arrangement. Not here, Becca stated firmly. Not today. This is your wedding day, Garrett. You should enjoy it. She then turned and walked away, leaving him speechless. That was incredible, Diane whispered as they returned to their table. You completely shut him down. I am shaking, Becca confessed. You did not show it for a second, Diane assured her. A man with kind but nervous eyes approached their table. Rebecca, it is good to see you. Marcus, thank you for being here. He shook Julian's hand. Mr. Ashford, thank you for all your help. Please call me Julian, he said. And thank you for your courage. Marcus glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Tessa's father, Richard Brightwell, is here. I will speak with him after dinner and show him everything. He needs to know what kind of man his daughter has married. Be careful, Becca warned. Garrett is suspicious. I will be, Marcus promised. But the truth has to come out. He then slipped back into the crowd, and Becca took a deep breath. The final act was about to begin. Have you ever been wronged so badly that the only path forward is to expose the truth, no matter the cost? That's the situation Becca was in, standing at her ex-wedding, not for revenge, but for freedom. Across the room, she watched Garrett talking to his new bride, Tessa. He gestured toward Becca's table, and a look of confusion crossed Tessa's face. Diane whispered, She thinks you are here to make trouble. No, Becca replied quietly. I am just here to tell the truth. The dinner was expensive, but Becca's stomach was in knots. She barely ate while her children enjoyed the meal. Tessa's powerful father, Richard, gave a glowing speech about his daughter and his new business partner. Becca saw Garrett relax, thinking he had gotten away with it all. But then Garrett's own mother, Patricia, stood up. Her speech was short and cold. We hoped for honesty and integrity, she said, looking straight at Becca. The message was unmistakable. The best man told jokes, painting Garrett as a perfect husband, which made Becca feel sick. When Garrett and Tessa had their first dance, they moved awkwardly like strangers. Watching them, Becca felt a surprising wave of peace. The anger was finally gone. Dance with me, she said to her friend Julian. As they swayed on the floor, he asked if she was glad she came. I needed to see he is just a man, she admitted. Not a monster and not a god, just a flawed person. Julian smiled warmly. You are incredible. For the first time in what felt like forever, Becca truly laughed. Across the floor, her eyes met Tessa's. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. They both knew the truth about Garrett, but only one of them was still free to walk away. A few minutes later, their friend Marcus approached Tessa's father. They stepped into a private room, and Becca knew this was it. Her heart pounded. After a long wait, Richard came out, his face like stone. He pulled his daughter aside and showed her something on his phone. The color drained from Tessa's face. She looked at Garrett with pure devastation, said something sharp, and walked away from him. Garrett tried to follow her, but Richard blocked his path. After a tense exchange, Garrett's confusion turned into visible panic. A moment later, Richard announced a family emergency to the guests, stating that the bride and her family had to leave at once. Tessa walked right past Garrett without a single glance. Suddenly, Garrett was standing completely alone in the middle of his own wedding reception. Guests whispered, wondering if the marriage was already over before it had even begun. Becca gathered her children, ready to go, but Garrett stopped them near the exit. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I just told the truth," Becca said calmly. "You ruined my wedding," he accused. "No, Garrett, you ruined it with your lies. I just decided to stop covering for you." His anger crumbled. "I made a mistake with you," he said, his voice breaking. Becca felt a final weight lift from her shoulders. "I know," she replied. "But that is your burden to carry now, not mine." With that, she turned and walked away with Julian and her children, and she did not look back. On the way to the airport, she felt a profound sense of peace. Julian asked if she was okay. "I am," she said, knowing it was completely true. "I really am." Model, imagine being cheated, lied to, and left with almost nothing by the person you built a life with. That was Becca's reality. But she chose to fight back, not for revenge, but for the truth. This story shows the incredible freedom that comes from standing up for yourself, even when you are terrified. If you have ever felt trapped, this is for you. On the flight home, her son Evan asked if they had done something bad to his dad. Becca assured him that telling the truth, even when it hurts, is always the right thing to do. That night, with the exhausted twins finally asleep, she sat with Julian in the quiet of her small apartment. He simply asked how she felt. 3 words came to mind: tired, relieved, and free. She turned to him, her heart full of gratitude. She thanked him for believing in her and for not walking away during the past 18 months when she felt too broken to fix. Julian simply told her that she was worth staying for. They shared a slow, meaningful kiss, and for the first time, in what felt like forever, she asked him to stay the night. Lying in his arms, Becca finally felt a sense of peace. Her sleep was deep, and for the first time in years, completely free of nightmares. The next morning, a call from an unknown number nearly went unanswered. It was Tessa, Garrett's former fiancée. Her voice was strained, but her words were a complete surprise. She called to say thank you. After the wedding disaster, her father had shown her everything. He revealed all the Garrett's financial fraud, the secret assets, and the endless stream of lies. Tessa admitted that 4 years earlier, when Becca tried to warn her, she had refused to listen. She had dismissed Becca as nothing more than a bitter, jealous ex-wife. Now she finally understood the devastating truth. Garrett did not love anyone. He only used people until they were no longer useful to him. In a moment of raw honesty, Tessa apologized for her role in destroying Becca's marriage. Her voice broke as she said that Becca had saved her from making the same mistake. After the call, a stunned Becca explained to Julian what had just happened. She had received thanks for ruining a wedding, but in reality, she had saved a life from misery. A few months later, her own divorce settlement was finalized. The evidence against Garrett was so overwhelming that his lawyers could do nothing. Becca received a truly fair division of their assets, finally correcting the injustice from 4 years before. Her friend Jennifer called it a victory, but to Becca, it felt like something far greater: freedom. She was finally able to quit her second job, which gave her precious time back with her children. The twins settled into a new 50-50 custody schedule. They saw their father regularly, but he was a different man now, much quieter, and perhaps broken. Julian became a natural part of their lives, loved by the twins and welcomed by her family. Life settled into a beautiful, normal rhythm. With her new financial stability, Becca found a larger apartment in a better neighborhood, a place she proudly secured all on her own. One morning, she watched Julian plan a museum trip with the kids and felt a deep sense of peace. Her life was finally hers again. Then, an expensive cream envelope arrived in the mail. Her stomach sank with dread. She opened it to find not a threat, but a settlement offer detailing a full and fair division of assets. It was everything she had fought for and more. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from Garrett. He apologized, admitting she had been right all along. He wrote that he did not expect forgiveness, but was trying to become a better person for their children. Becca read the shocking apology and set it down. She looked around her new, brighter apartment, filled with moving boxes and the happy sounds of her family. Julian was making lopsided pancakes, and the twins were arguing playfully. When Julian asked how Garrett's letter made her feel, she thought for a long moment. She felt no anger, no resentment, only a quiet sense of closure. The past was finally behind her, and her future was a bright, open door. Model, I did not need his apology, but it mattered for the children that he was trying. The twins tumbled out of the bathroom, already arguing. Emma asked if they could have pancakes. Julian smiled and pointed to the stove. Evan looked at the pan and announced that they were kind of ugly. Becca started to scold him, but Julian just laughed. He agreed they looked terrible, but promised they tasted good. The four of them gathered around her small, wobbly kitchen table. It was a table filled with history. An hour later, her friend Diane arrived with coffee, donuts, and a beautiful storm of chaos. After they left, the doorbell rang. It was Marcus Caldwell, holding a bottle of wine. He looked around the new apartment and smiled warmly. "You did it," he said. Becca shook her head. "We did it. You were a huge part of this." He simply replied, "You were the one who survived." Marcus explained that Garrett had been forced to step down from his company. That evening, Becca received an even bigger surprise. A call from Patricia, Garrett's mother. She called to thank Becca for showing mercy. She said it gave her son a chance to finally face his actions and grow up. Later that night, Becca sat with Julian on their small balcony. It overlooked a quiet park. She asked him if he ever regretted getting pulled into her complicated life. "Never," Julian said immediately. He knew that when she pushed him away the most, that was when she needed someone to stay. She leaned against him, feeling safe. "I love you," she whispered. It was the first time she had said the words out loud. "I love you too," he replied. Before falling asleep, Becca saw a text from Tessa. She was going back to school for art history, something she had always dreamed of. She thanked Becca for showing her that it is never too late to start over. Becca smiled as she typed back a message of support. She closed her eyes and finally understood something important. For 4 years, she had been waiting for Garrett to see her value, but his opinion never mattered. The only opinion that mattered was her own. She was not just a mother, an ex-wife, or a girlfriend. She was Rebecca Hartwell, a 38-year-old survivor. She was imperfect and flawed, but she was enough. She fell asleep dreaming of open roads. 1 year later, she stood in the kitchen of a house she had bought with her own money. The house had 3 bedrooms and a backyard where the twins played with their new puppy. Julian was at the stove, making pancakes that were no longer lopsided. Becca finally understood that the best revenge was not revenge at all. It was building a life so full of joy that the past could no longer touch it. When Garrett texted, asking if the children could come to his 41st birthday party, she said yes. He was just somebody she used to know. He was the person who taught her that your worth is never set by those who cannot see it. Soon the house was filled with the laughter of her tribe. All the people who mattered. Dinner was noisy, messy, and perfect. Afterward, her daughter Emma asked her, "Mom, are you happy?" Becca looked at the beautiful life around her. Yes, baby, I am really happy. Later that night, she sat on the bathroom floor, just as she had a year ago. But this time, she was crying tears of healing. Julian sat quietly beside her. I made it, she whispered. He took her hand. You did more than survive. You thrived. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you, she said, for seeing me when I could not see myself. This was what she had been searching for. It was not revenge or even justice. It was peace, love, and freedom. That was my story. The day I stopped being invisible and took my power back. If you have ever felt small or forgotten, please know you are not alone and you are stronger than you think. If this story touched you, please hit the like button so that more people who need to hear it can find it. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you had to stand up for yourself and say, enough is enough. I read every single one. For more stories about strength and second chances, subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that they are powerful. Every like and comment helps build this community. Thank you for listening. And always remember, your worth was never defined by those who could not see it. Until next time, keep thriving. This content was researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful lessons and inspiration. Thank you for being part of this journey.